Do you know how many people are like, complicating something that doesn't need to be complicated? It's like the history of mankind. We must complicate it because then we'll be right. Same thing going on since the beginning of time. It's the very, very reason that God said, do not take from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because you will naturally not accept or understand, not accept what God was doing in the Old Testament, which was raising children, and yet not understand that everybody that has a king over them, it's because you were following paganism. You don't have to believe that, you don't. But I was just listening to this podcast for the longest time. And it's like, no, it's okay to worship. You got the Joe Rogans there saying, if you do DMT, you can see gray people. Then we have the UFO committee today, right? They did all that which that's just, look, there's not people from another planet, okay? It's what the Bible talks about. It's fallen angels. That's what it is. And likely our government has been colluding with it. And others. Yeah. So here's what's interesting. The Stone of Destiny. This is the Stone of Destiny. I think it usually is in Scotland, but it'll go to Ireland, Scotland, England. They share it. It goes under the seat of where the king's going to be coronated. The king's going to be crowned. So, see, there's two different stories. Some will say, oh no, this says Jacob laid his head on this and slept. Well, maybe that's what the fairies wanted you to believe. Because there's actually, it says the origins of the Stone of Destiny are steeped in legend and mysticism. According to various accounts, it is said to have had mystical properties that connect to the ancient deities of the Celts, particularly, I can't even pronounce this, Tathia Dua, whatever, the mythical race of god-like beings in Irish mythology. So everybody had a king over them, because here's the thing: to think that the Israelites were the first of people, I think God, that's just where the story began for us. I'm sure that there were many other people since they were here, and God just said, okay, I hand you over. Hand you over. Hand you over. Hand you over. And he did it with the Israelites too. And it's so very simple lining up the Old Testament and the New Testament. I know it seems complicated, but you have to look at, you have to think about it. And yet what people want to do is they want to tell you, no, you could believe in all the saints, and I resonate with Saint Michael. Okay, yeah, but Saint Michael is part of Jesus and part of God. So God's not going to be okay with that. But this is an ongoing pattern, and this was the very reason that God never wanted them to take from the tree of knowledge, because then they become too grandiose and too ego-filled, and then it becomes about you, because you want to do these rituals. So there was a problem with, all this deity worshiping in like Scotland, all that, because that's what everybody was doing back in the day. But God tried. God was trying, just like, yep, okay, go on to it. That's what you keep wanting to do. Because everybody wants all that little pretty stuff, right? I'm going to light the candle, I'm going to put oil, I'm going to anoint it, and then I'm going to do the rosary, and I'm going to do beads, and then you somehow think it means something. So you're not as attracted to the way God wanted you to do it. But God's whole point was so that you wouldn't have to have a king over you. Actually, so that he would be your king. So this is a great way to make, a bunch of countries, and it's their tradition. So, I'm in America, who am I to talk? I'm just giving my thoughts on this. You continually have a king over you because you're following this ridiculousness. Now, I know it's your custom, so please don't take that. I know that sounded insulting. I just mean that maybe that's the reason there's so many problems. But we shouldn't talk here in America. Look at the, train wreck we're in. But I'm just saying, eventually God wanted him to be the king, but you can't if you just continually. And if this came from paganism, the fairies, then this is a great way to keep you stagnant, to keep you from being a country that truly prospers, because you will forever have a king over you. So God just says, okay. It doesn't mean that people that truly worship Jesus and the Old Testament God, that God disregards them. It just means that overall the country not getting it. So, and I think America's being judged right now if America will end up having a king over her. You should be thinking about that. I'm just saying, because if you let people allow you to become immature biblically, and think that kundalini and envisioning a serpent going up your spine and chakras and energy centers, if you can't see how, no, I thought at one time it's easy trap to fall into, think, oh, it all is the same thing. No, it's not. No, it's not. You can't force people, like here in America, people should be allowed to worship what they want, as long as they're, not sacrificing humans and dogs, But, I mean, we allow that because that's the most civilized thing to do. But, that said, no, it doesn't, it does not all apply. It doesn't. And so God continually does not allow your country to truly prosper for the little people, because there's no maturity in regards to him. Yet in the continual problem that everybody is falling on is that, no, it has to be more. Like, they think it has to be more. It has to be something more complicated. It has to be, we do this and we do that. No, God made it really simple. I think man just wants to complicate it, because, again, these are men that went and got higher educated, and then they want to look at God's word not as literal, because they say it doesn't line up. No, the Old Testament totally lines up with the New. It does. If you look at it in regards to maturity levels, God maturity level, totally lines up. Plus, you look at the time, the timing. So this is a great way to keep people with a king over them forever. So then you're never really biblically maybe some of you, but your overall country's not prospering, because the people themselves continually fall back on the higher educated, who say, no, it must be more complicated. No, we must be able to incorporate the serpent going up the spine when we do kundalini, because it awakens all the energy centers. No, God didn't care about the physical. I mean, not that he said, but he said, don't attach to the flesh. All that crap is attached. I'm not saying he wanted you to disregard the flesh, but honestly, that was not his most important concern, because he knew, if you look at every single pagan religion, it's all about the flesh. Globalism is all about the flesh. They want to live forever. That's why the transhumanism is tied to it. So that's no biblical maturity there, because they didn't want there to be. So they make all these excuses, how, no, it doesn't make sense. No, it's just you were never given the knowledge to understand it, because you didn't biblically mature. I'm not trying to be, a cocky, SOB here. I'm just saying the whole point was, eventually, is there going to be a country that can be biblically mature enough to let God, the true God, Jesus, be king. But that means the people themselves having to be biblically mature. Do we look biblically mature at all? And that doesn't mean being saints, going to, I'm not talking about that. It means putting, human beings before the creation. It means, being selfless, not selfish. All that, it's energy centers and chakras and kundalini. That's all about you. It's all selfish. It's all, I'm going to get enlightened. Yeah, I went down all that. It doesn't do any good. It doesn't. It doesn't. It just, once you surrender to the fact that it's the Bible, God will give you the wisdom. But there's this, God wanted to be the king. As long as you still want to coronate everybody, then you don't want Jesus to be king. And maybe you don't. Who am I? I'm just a stupid American, right?